It's the second day of the Africa CEO Forum here in Abidjan, and there is no signs of anybody slowing down. Networking, signing of deals, intense discussions on how to take Africa forwards. Welcome to this Focus On segment. Were there any deals or practical solutions that you were aware of that came from this forum?
What I can tell you is that this discussion, this conversation was everywhere. And what I think is the most important outcome is that that everybody is talking about is decarbonation. And we're talking about decarbonation, and at the same time, decarbonation is going to lead to a certain kind of deglobalization, and it is going to favor a local industry. And as I was giving as an example, for example, the tire industry, which is almost non-existent in Africa. We are one of the best producers of EVA, and we are exporting that abroad to import 90% of our needs in tire. And it's a $100 million market, it's 10,000 of jobs, and now we're starting to have some projects. There's a very big $400 million projects in that area. So what I think we achieved is that the industrialization conversation is back again, and we have to think that 2 years ago everybody was thinking that industrialization was dead because of digital, because of the service industry. Said Africa is not going to be able to follow the traditional path of growth where people go from agriculture to industry. But now, because everybody thought about robotics and said, okay, it's not going to happen. But now, because of decarbonation, because of deglobalization, the industrialization of our agriculture, of our mining industry, etc., is just back at the center of the conversation. And in all the meetings that you are attending, and whether it's a side event for the mining industry or a conversation with the president, it's the talk. Although everybody's talking about projects. And besides, we have the financing issue that what was at one point a problem, because the developed world had decided that we could not finance any more fossil fuel-based project, which is, I think, from an African point of view, it's a scandalous, because you are basically penalizing Africa, which has not been the main polluter, and you're saying that the gas is a polluting industry. But at the same time, 3 months or 4 months after, because you have the crisis between Russia and Ukraine, you decide that the gas is okay and that we need to start financing again. So there's a kind of, let's say, irony, not to say hypocrisy. And I think that's why Africa needs to get back its narrative in its own hands and takes its own decision.
You have now signed 3 major deals in 2 days. I know one of them is with a pharmaceutical company, one is cement, one is financial industry. Would you just care to expand on that a little bit, and how these deals is going to help shape Africa and move forward from the crisis?
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. And as you said, we did sign 3 transactions, 3 deals over the last 2 days, yesterday and today. And what I find interesting is that these deals are actually quite different and show the variety of type of operations that IFC can do. As you mentioned, one is a company that distributes and manufactures pharmaceutical products, and this is, of course, at the core of our response for COVID-19, which is one of the big dimensions of our work over the last 2 years, where IFC has really stepped up in terms of making sure that Africa improves its health systems and get access to pharmaceuticals, to vaccines also. As you know, we have financed the first plant to does COVID-19 vaccines in the continent. And so we have this transaction that we just signed with Avacare is a very good example of that type of intervention that we do. Then the second transaction we signed is, as you said, cement company with Futa. And it's very interesting that IFC is one of the big areas that we really want to focus in Africa is all around supporting the development of the housing sector. And we take in that sector, like in all the sectors we work on, we try to take a holistic approach. So not just look at housing in isolation, but how do you develop a housing sector, housing system, affordable housing system in Africa? And you need to look at different dimensions. So the transaction we signed is cement. You need building materials, and IFC is keen on supporting companies who will produce locally, not just cement, but glass, steel, all the types of materials that are needed for the houses. But we also look at a more holistic approach, as I was saying. We look at working with developers, and we're trying to identify and support developers that can build affordable housing at scale, because there's a huge demand in Africa, a huge need for all this housing. And then the other dimension that we're working on also is we support the development of the mortgage sector. So we work with financial institutions so that they can offer longer term mortgages, and as you know, the level of penetration of the mortgage market in Africa is low. So there is opportunity to grow, and this is one of the dimensions we do.
I want to know, what's the significance of this partnership formed today?
Well, we're very excited about this partnership because it allows us to work with EcoBank and the African Development Bank to deploy a capability to bring farmers into the digital economy, whether they're online or offline, allowing them to sell their products directly to market and get higher prices for their product, get access to quality inputs to improve their productivity, and get access to working capital to allow them to expand their businesses and create greater financial security and greater financial resilience. We think that's critical to financial inclusion generally across Africa, and really helps stabilize and help increase the inclusive growth of the economies in the region.
Now, this kind of technology, it wasn't designed with the purpose of COVID happened, it was designed before COVID. Can you just expand on what this technology is and how this technology works specifically for smallholder farmers?
So this technology enrolls farmers onto a platform, gives them a digital identity, and then gives them access to both information but also inputs, allows them to connect directly with sellers, and it works offline as well as online, which sounds sort of counterintuitive when you're talking about the digital economy, but you're able to do transactions even in villages that may not have consistent connectivity, and then upload regularly to update their accounts. That's going to allow them to get better prices, increase their incomes, create greater financial security, and improve food security generally, because they're going to be able to produce more and better products.
Now, moving on to EcoBank, your role in this partnership is crucial. Could you just give us a brief idea what your role is about as the partner?
So, number one, this is an opportunity for us to become an effective participant into fixing an issue, which is a structural issue in Africa. So partnering with MasterCard is indeed, once again, a step change in terms of what we believe that we should be addressing that issue, which is not an issue only in one country, is an issue on the continent. And the contribution of EcoBank is to make sure that we partner with a payment giant, and we provide that backbone in terms of understanding the financial needs of those smallholders. Once we can have a track record in terms of payment history, then we can begin to be more comfortable in providing the credit and the facilities that would maybe needed for those smallholders to grow. What is important for us is to make sure that we have that reliability in history to make sure that we can anticipate the future. So that's the basis of the partnership, and we are very excited about how we can make it happen.
What is your prediction if all these smallholder farmers join together? Your prediction of a GDP growth outcome for these smallholder farmers, specifically on the African continent, I would say the African GDP economy?
So there are different points that you need to pay attention to. Number one, agriculture is a massive contributor to the economy in Africa. Indeed, in terms of contribution to wealth, it's very small. So you need to see how you can match both contribution to the economy and contribution to wealth. And that's where we can play a role, and that's why the importance of FTB also is very important, because you want to have that massive impact if you want to address that issue. So by partnering and doing this, we expect to see significant impact in terms of contribution into wealth. That contribution today is less than 20% in the majority of countries. You want to see how we can move that a little bit higher in the value chain. So if we can go to 30, 40, then you begin to have an impact in terms of agriculture participating into the wealth of our economies.
And then moving on to AFDB, now President Adesina in the annual meetings made available funding for food security. How is this platform aligning with AFDB's strategy?
So the AFDB recently approved a $1.5 billion emergency food production facility as a result of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. There's been a lot of disruption in fertilizer prices, in food product prices like wheat, etc. And so for us, we have to, on an emergency basis, really support increased production in Africa and also with higher productivity and yields. And so this would really mean that we need to get fertilizer, we need to get seeds, we need to get other inputs. I mean, the Farm Pass program allows us to digitize such a process. And in digitizing this process, we're able to make sure that no subsidies get really leaked in the system, and the subsidies go really towards the intended target. So for us, this is a really big fit. Especially one of our 5 strategic priorities is to feed Africa, and so we're looking at this challenge as an opportunity to further deepen our strategic priority of feeding Africa.
So basically the CLEF initiative is about government, the cocoa and chocolate industry, and a handful of philanthropic partners joining forces to address the persistent crisis of learning that we have in country, as we have in many parts of the world, but also with that addressing the crisis of child labor that is persistent in the cocoa and chocolate industry. And at this intersection between education, learning, schooling, and social responsibility, policy and private sector work together in different manners that actually take evidence-based solutions to address this in a different manner than has been done in the past.
How much have you invested thus far?
Right. So as Jacobs Foundation, we have a 10-year strategy, 2030, where we have pledged to invest 500 million Swiss francs, which is give or take 520 million US dollars for comparison. We're working at international level in 2 fields. One is evidence generation and supporting the science of learning, so that we have the research that allows us to do the work in other parts of the world, and that is international. The other level is with schools, where we have a very large program that also covers many African countries. But we have a third pillar, which is based on countries, which is including Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana in Africa, 2 of the 4 countries where we want to have national operations. The other 2 are Switzerland and Latin America, 1 country that is yet to be selected.
You spoke about a summit that's happening in November in Lomé. What's it from here?
That's a continuation of what we have done. The CEO Forum has always been about promoting economic integration. So I think this first step we did it. You see, there's people from everywhere in the halls and the corridors, and what we wanted to say, okay, now we have done this at the global level, and we need, now that the CFTA got into force, we need to organize the private sector so that industry by industry we create this public-private dialogue to make every industry a common market. And so we targeted straight away the financial industry. Second goal is to try to put on the agenda with the regulators all the issue of cross-border regulation so that we can really create a Pan-African market of financial services. And the last goal is to improve financial inclusion on the continent.
And that brings us to the end of this year's Africa CEO Forum here in Abidjan, Côte d'Ivoire. Do go to cnbcafrica.com to catch these stories in full. Until next time, goodbye.